Hello and welcome into One Piece chapter 1115 Continental Fragments. My name is Sai and today we are here to break down this latest chapter and just talk a little bit about it. And boy oh boy do we have a lot to talk about. We got reactions from around the world, we have Vegapunk's message, and then we have small tidbits of Agate Island here and there. So, with that being said, let's get this started. So the first thing we're going to talk about this week is the cover page story, because we actually get volume 5 of Yamato's journey this week, and they have yet to take off on their journey. Yamato is still chilling at the Flower Capital, which, you know, I'm not complaining, but it does remind me that these cover page stories usually take a long time until things get crazy, right? The Gemma one, I think, was like 30 volumes. Yamato is only at volume 5, so, you know, we got to give it some time, and I wouldn't be surprised at this rate if we do legitimately spend a volume per city, right? We're going to go to Okobore Town, Amigasu Village, Udon Prison, Bakura Town, the place with the sword cemetery. Like, we are going to spend a lot of time with Yamato if this is the pace Oda's going, right? Which is no big deal. I'm a big fan of Yamato, so this is pretty cool. And I do admit, it is nice seeing all of the Wano citizens chilling around for once and not having to fight a civil war, right? Like, it's not bad. It's not bad. But yeah, Otoko and Hiyori are preparing some bento for Yamato. And look, what do we got here? We got onigiri. I think I also see some noodles in there. I also see some Odin ingredients. I don't see the broth for the Odin, but, you know, like, Odin, it fits Yamato. Like, not bad, not bad. But yeah, on to the actual chapter now, because I don't have too much to say about the cover page. We go to Wano. Deja vu, huh? So we start the chapter off in Wano. We see the giant straw hat. We see Momonosuke, Kinemon, Otama, and even Shinobu in the background. And they're watching this broadcast through Orochi's old Denden Mushi, which is nice because if Orochi didn't have this Denden Mushi, Momonosuke and the others would not be getting this information whatsoever because they are still a closed-off country. So Orochi actually came in with the big W for once, which, you know, we love to see. So Momonosuke ends up dropping a line and he says, "So, JOYBOY, you are a pirate too, just like Luffy." Kinemon rightfully is like, "Hey, my lord, you know about this JOYBOY?" And then, of course, you know, in classic Oda fashion, he cuts the conversation off right there, which is something I always find pretty funny, right? It's Oda nerfing these characters because these characters like Momonosuke, Yamato, and even Zunisha to an extent, they all know about JOYBOY. And the reason I say Zunisha to an extent is because we can't really conversate with Zunisha super well, so I would consider Zunisha an outlier. But as far as Momonosuke and Yamato goes, they know about JOYBOY. We can talk to these guys and ask them questions, and they could answer us, right? They have Odin's journal. Odin logged his entire journey up until the very end. We're only missing the last 1 or 2 pages. You know, everything besides that, Yamato and Momonosuke already know, but they just have not told us. Honestly, I'd compare them to Robin. Robin reads every single poneglyph we come across, but Robin doesn't divulge all of the information, right? We get the spark notes, but later on, Oda goes back to those poneglyphs sometimes and he says, "Hey, there was also this extra information in there that we just didn't know about quite yet," right? Like, oh, okay. Yeah, Yamato and Momonosuke, they know a lot more than they're letting on, and I would argue that that is even a key reason why Yamato and Momonosuke didn't join us on our journey. It's probably because Oda didn't want us to know too much quite yet. I'm not saying they're gonna join eventually, but, you know, like, if there was a good reason, it's 1, because of Wano, but 2, because these characters would have too much knowledge that we weren't ready for. But yeah, it's cool seeing Momonosuke flex his JOYBOY knowledge a little bit. I'm curious if he's gonna spread the good word of JOYBOY around Wano, because that could happen, right? He could spread his father's words and tell everybody about his journey, but that is yet to be seen since Wano is still a closed country. The next people we see, surprise, surprise, are the Damaro Black Pirates. They're currently being held at Marine Base G4, which is actually a marine base we don't know too much about. I'm not even too sure where G4 is located. Let me see. I'm gonna look it up real quick, actually. Do we know what G4 is or where it's at? One Piece G4 Marine Base. Let me see. Oh, no, we don't actually. Yeah. No G4 on the One Piece wiki. So yeah, this is a brand new location and Damaro Black and crew are currently being held here. What's interesting though, you know, minus the dialogue is really important, but what's interesting is that they're actually missing their fake Nami Fake Robin, Fake Chopper, and a couple of other characters that I just don't remember off the top of my head. These guys are a bunch of losers, right? Sorry guys if I forgot about these bozos. But yes, we now see that Tomorrow Black and his gang are now cosplaying the Kid Pirates. And it's kind of nice that they're cosplaying the main ones too, right? Like Kid has an entire gang of like, I think 25 crewmates. But of course, there's only 4 main ones, which is what we see here. You know, Tomorrow Black as Kid. We have the Sanji one as Killer. I think that's the fake Frankie as Wire. And then we have fake Zoro as Heat. Yeah, there's a lot of goofy things in this panel. Why they chose to cosplay the Kid Pirates, I have no idea. I'm not too sure how Tomorrow Black and his gang actually operates. They kind of remind me of identity theft, right? Well, I guess they are identity theft. But usually identity thieves wait until a person has died or has gone missing to take up their identity, right? The Straw Hats were missing for 2 years, so Tomorrow Black probably felt like it was really safe to cosplay as the Straw Hat Pirates. So now we have it. The Kid Pirates have seemingly been defeated by Shanks, so Tomorrow Black's like, hey, why not cosplay the Kid Pirates, right? Nobody knows what happened at Elbaf. I wonder if he has that insider information or if he just thought cosplaying Kid would be a smart move. I'm not super sure if Tomorrow Black is that smart, but yes. The now fake Killer says, hey, JOYBOY, who cares about him? I bet you could easily beat him, right, Captain Kid? And then Tomorrow Black says, duh, that guy's already dead. And then we have the fake Zoro coming in saying, that's our captain. The only thing bigger than his confidence is his belly, which doesn't sound like a compliment, but hey, you know, low be for me to say, right? These are pirates here. And then Tomorrow Black now says, yes, clearly, I am a million times stronger or tougher than this Joy Toy. And then somebody corrects him and they say, it's JOYBOY, boss. And this is a gag. You know, I'm gonna say it right here. I am a conspiracy theorist. When you guys come to these videos, you come here for the wacky harebrained schemes I come up with once in a blue moon. And the reading this really got my noggin thinking. Because what's weird about this is that they have a play on words, right? Instead of calling him JOYBOY, he calls him Joy Toy. And I do wonder if that is some sort of foreshadowing. Because, you know, going back to Kid, when we first saw his Kid design, which is kind of redundant, right? Kid's Kid design. We actually saw a Kid holding a toy robot. So having this Kid say Joy Toy, it's like, okay, like that's kind of interesting because we also know that the Ancient Kingdom is an advanced civilization. They have technology that is greater than anything we have ever seen in the series. So there's a good chance that there were, you know, toy soldiers or robot soldiers back in the day. And it kind of makes me wonder if JOYBOY might have been a toy or maybe a robot to some extent. And if he was a robot or a toy, it would also make sense as to why the fake Kid would say he's a million times stronger. Because Eustace Kid's devil fruit is the Jiki no Mi. It is the magnet fruit. This devil fruit automatically makes Kid a nightmare for any robot or magnetic opponent. So maybe there is some weird Oda foreshadowing here. And, you know, last chapter, I talked about the Amu that is on top of the Mother Flame Broom. And, you know, of course, that could be Atumu, or it could be, you know, the Ancient Kingdom of Mu. But another route I spun it was that maybe Oda was referring to Amu, which is one of the robots from Doraemon, from one of the movies. Because there's a robot called Amu, and there's another robot called Emu, and they were like twin siblings. So it does make me wonder if JOYBOY's real name was actually Amu, and they were a robot soldier. I don't know. Now we're getting too crazy. I don't want to go too deep on this. But, you know, this is something we do have to keep in mind. I think Oda's play on words are very intentional. Oda's last play on words that I remember right now were actually during the Reverie, where Sabo was having a flashback about Luffy and Ace having the D. And then Luffy and Ace were like, hey, Sabo, you want the D? We'll give it to you. So they just gave Sabo the D and called him Sa-D-Bo, which is something I think might have deeper meaning to as well. So I wouldn't be surprised if this all somehow ties in. Like right now, everything seems crazy. Every theory that comes out about this will seem insane. But as we get more information about JOYBOY in the Ancient Kingdom and the Will of D, I feel like we could look back at chapters and moments like these gags, these jokes, and we could see that Oda was foreshadowing stuff the entire time. But yeah, for now, we'll go ahead and move on a little bit. I don't want to stay cooped up on, headcanon for too long. The next thing we see are the Marine soldiers. And these guys, man, they are eating up this message hook, line, and sinker. Yo, these Marines, like, they're not even shooting their guns anymore. They're not fighting. They're not, I mean, I guess they are sailing towards the island, but, they're kind of chilling. They're chilling. They're looking up and they're like, oh, Vegapunk, you're telling me the world government started a war 900 years ago? Wait, isn't that us? Yeah, no, it's just so funny seeing how engrossed these Marines are on the message. But yeah, I'll read what Vegapunk says here verbatim. He says, do bear in mind, I only have access to a handful of poneglyphs, but their combined narrative clearly chronicles an unbelievable history about a great war in the distant past. During that period, JOYBOY faced an enemy, the organization now known as the World Government. Back then, they were merely allied powers, a temporary coalition consisting of 20 separate kingdoms. It can be assumed that an alliance was the only feasible way to oppose the formidable faction to which JOYBOY belonged. I'm afraid that the cause of this conflict still eludes me, so I do not presume to judge the morality of the combatants. I can only say that this war was a clash of two opposing ideologies. I mentioned earlier that JOYBOY was born into a fantastical civilization, one so advanced that it is hard to believe it existed over 900 years ago. The weapons that existed during this century-long struggle are far beyond modern science. Alright, so I know that was a lot of dialogue, but we did get a lot of really cool things while Vegapunk was spewing that out. First up, we have Warkity still chasing Dory, Brogy, and Luffy, which, is pretty standard fare. But the next thing we have is Marcus Mars, and he is walking through that Labophase, and he is furious. Well, maybe he's not mad, but he's activating his Conqueror's haki, which, hey, it's confirmed, man. The Gorosei have Conqueror's haki. It is indeed that black lightning they spewed out when they first showed up. I wonder if we'll get showings from the other Gorosei members like Saint Saturn, Jupiter, or even Venus, because they were all also shown with the same black lightning when they appeared here on Egghead Island. So I wouldn't be super shocked, and also I feel like an easy way to just get rid of the snails now is to just have Warkity roar again, right? Because Warkity roared, and then people off the coast of Egghead Island lost consciousness. I'm surprised that roar didn't just knock out every snail here on the island, right? Like, I feel like that shouldn't be too crazy, but maybe there's like some kind of limitation to that. But yeah, after we see Marcus Mars look really boss in that panel, the next thing we get is our very first JOYBOY silhouette. Yeah, I mean, of course, there's not too much to go off of here. I was hoping we would get some defining features like, oh, like this guy's a giant, this guy's a buccaneer, long arm, long leg, fishman, whatever. Like, we didn't get none of that, which is fair, right? But we have to remember that this isn't still confirmed to be human, right? Because this is their Sun God Nika form. When they're in that Gear 5th Sun God Nika form, they can change their body shape however they want. Luffy can make himself bigger. He can make himself look like a giant. So it's hard to look at that silhouette and clearly say, oh, he's X race, right? Because they could just change it up. So this panel of JOYBOY doesn't tell me too much in terms of what he is. But there is one thing that kind of stood out to me in his silhouette, and that's the fact that he has this weird, like, tail thing going on, which I put it on the thumbnail so you guys can see it in a more, like, zoomed in fashion. But yeah, he has, like, this weird tail thing going on. We know Luffy has the exact same thing, but for Luffy, it's his sash. It's the wrapping around his waist. I don't know if JOYBOY had the same fashion sense as Luffy, or hey, maybe this is an actual tail. I'm not exactly sure, but yeah, that's like a small detail that I'm really curious about now. Like, what is that? Like, is it a sash? Is it his tailcoat? Or is it perhaps something else? Another thing we get to see in that JOYBOY panel, and something I thought was even cooler, were the kings. Yeah, man. If you guys know me, you know that I love celestial dragons, and it's so cool seeing the original kings, right? Like, these are the OG 20. And they're actually quite notable. Like, Oda put some work into these silhouettes, right? JOYBOY looks like Sun God Nika Luffy. But these guys, I don't know, dude. I don't know. The one in the middle actually stood out to me the most. Because if you look at him, it looks like a basic design at first, but if you really look at him, he has like this weird ball in front of his face. And I'm like, wait, is this Buggy? You know what I mean? Like, it looks like a clown nose. It could be something else. It could be a part of his hair. I don't know. Maybe it's like some weird glasses. I have no clue. But I'm just gonna say right here, man, when I first saw this, I did immediately think of Buggy. The reason why this Buggy connection sticks out so keenly to me is because Buggy is a little bit of an anomaly in the series, right? I don't know how many of you guys know this, but Buggy's nose isn't like a clown nose that you can take on and off. It's a real, true and blue nose. Like, it is attached to his face. He feels with that thing, right? Like, he can smell with that thing. So with that being the case, that means that there exists a tribe or a race that have those noses. So I wonder if this is maybe that race in the silhouette. I'm not exactly super sure, but another reason why I do like this is because there are a lot of theories flowing around out there that say that Buggy is also a celestial dragon, just like his cabin brother Shanks, because Shanks is a celestial dragon, so Buggy could be one, right? It could further their connection in some sort of way. But yeah, like I thought that was a really cool add-in here. Is that what Oda intended, or is that just a wacky silhouette? I have no clue. As far as the guy to the right of him, he has crazy spiky hair going on. It kind of reminds me of Weevil or maybe even Shiki. But unlike Buggy, nobody's really tied them to being a celestial dragon, so I don't really have too many eggs in that fight. But another thing that really stood out to me, and something I just noticed right now, is that if you look at the 3 kings or queens in that panel, they have these crowns that have 3 distinct points. And those 3 points are exactly the same as the 3 points that Emu has in their silhouette. You know, you scroll down to the end of this chapter. I'm gonna do it right now, actually. I have the chapter in front of me. Yeah, Emu has the 3-pointed crown. And it's like, yo, I think this is further evidence that Emu is probably from the Void Century. This Emu is most likely the same Emu Nerona from 900 years ago. Yo, there's so much here, man. I love silhouettes, dude. You know, it's like looking at a locked Lego character in a video game, right? Like, how do we unlock these guys? What is it gonna look like when they're colored in? I'm not too sure. Oh, wait. One thing I forgot to mention. Yeah, the elephant in the room. The most prominent thing in this silhouette, minus the kings, minus JOYBOY, is the fact that these guys also have that weird swirling mark coming out from underneath them that we saw during Dragon's silhouette image of the Holy Knights. Yo, remember that one? Remember when we saw the Holy Knights and they had those crazy swirls in the background and we were like, yo, what is up with that? Are those devil fruit swirls? Like, what's going on? Right? Those are the exact same swirls right here. And it's coming out from the ground underneath the kings. So yeah, I'm expecting some insane powers here. I wouldn't be surprised if this somehow does correlate to the Holy Knights. I mean, of course, they're all of the same family because 20 kings become the celestial dragons. They're descendants. Boom, Holy Knights. Yeah, they're all connected in that regard. But I do think that maybe this is implying that each king has a descendant in the Holy Knights. I think that makes the most sense, right? Like, hey, each family picks one representative that can be a part of the Holy Knights. I'm not too sure. But I do think it is a cool add-in that Oda did here. Another thing I really enjoyed about Vegapunk's dialogue correlating with this is that Vegapunk says that he doesn't know who is morally correct in that war. And I really love that Oda made note of that, because the best fights, in my opinion, and the best wars in anime are ones where you can see both sides being justified. We don't know why 20 kingdoms decided to hold hands and fight JOYBOY, right? That's not something you can just do with a bunch of villains, right? Like, I doubt every kingdom out there are like, hey, let's be bad guys and kill this good guy. No, it's not that simple. And plus, we now, you know, from this chapter, I'm gonna skip ahead a little bit, but we know that water levels rose 200 years in the past. And Vegapunk says that is probably because of the ancient weapons. Well, who was friends with the ancient weapons? It was JOYBOY. JOYBOY had connections with Wano. Pluton is now underneath Wano. JOYBOY were friends with the mermaids. He wrote an apology letter to Poseidon. So it's like, yo, if somebody was using the ancient weapons during the war, it was probably JOYBOY. There's a good chance that JOYBOY is the reason why waters kept on rising. Or maybe it's painted that way right now, and then we get like a fake out later on. But yeah, I think JOYBOY might have been responsible for Rising Waters, and the 20 Kingdoms came together to take him down, or vice versa. We're not exactly super sure yet, but I just do love that Oda is painting such a great picture here. And also, what Vegapunk says here about not knowing the morality of the combatants, it perfectly ties in with what Vegapunk said at the beginning of the broadcast, where he was like, hey, this message is going to start playing when my heart stops beating. But, you know, don't blame the guy who killed me because I don't know enough about them, right, to judge if they're good or evil. And I think this just plays in, once again, with not knowing if the world government is truly on our side or against us. I feel like at one point, headcanon now, but I feel like at one point, they were really good guys, but just over time, because they didn't want a repeat of the past, they're becoming more and more corrupt and evil. I feel like that's how it is, and that's how real life typically is, right? Like, you start off with good intentions, but somewhere down the road, you become the guy you never wanted to be. And I'm sure that's something we all here can relate to, right? Growing up as kids, we all had certain dreams or ideas or things we wanted to do, and then you time skip 25 plus years later, and it's like, yo, we didn't do any of that. Or, hey, we're going down a completely different path. Or, I'm the guy I never wanted to be. Or, I never expected myself to be in this situation. That's just how it is. And I do think the world government will paint that exact picture. And, you know, going back again, you know, so many flashbacks here and throwbacks. But when we first got here to Egghead Island and we had Shaka talking to Frankie, Robin, Sanji, Usopp, and Nami, Shaka did give them somewhat of the lowdown on his information about the Void Century. We didn't get to see it as the audience, but when we cut over to their reactions, you know, they were all crying. Usopp couldn't believe it. Frankie said, wow, that's a romantic story. So it's like, yeah, like this story, the Void Century, it's going to be a mixed and complex bag. And I really like that. You know, Oda's putting a lot of hype into this Void Century, and I'm looking forward to it. And I'm gonna say it right here, but it has to be good. You know, I don't want to be that guy, but yo, Oda has been cooking this story for 27 years now, right? If the Void Century is not a banger, I don't know what to say, right? This is a story that Oda probably has been cooking up for a long, long time. So I want to see it pay off. So now, finally, moving on, the next place we get to see is Zou in Zunisha. We get a nice shot of the whale tree, which I thought is kind of notable, because the whale tree, I think, is going to be really important later down the road, because whales and celestial dragons kind of go hand in hand, right? Every celestial dragon, or at least the fodder celestial dragons, they all have the whale tail haircuts, so I think that will come into play during the Void Century. But yeah, we see Carrot, we see Wanda, we see the Musketeers, sorry, forgot their names, but they're there. They're all kind of chilling. They're listening to the message. And what's notable about this is that it looks like we do have a mix of night and day minks all hanging out together, which is nice to see, right? Because back when we first got to Zou, Inuarashi ruled the day, Nekomamushi ruled the night, and those two forces just never really saw eye to eye. Of course, once we got to Wano and Onigashima, that all started getting jumbled and, you know, nobody cared anymore. So it's nice seeing that Zou is now functioning like a real society, right? No longer is it being split between night and day factions. They're all just one unified group now. The next people we see, though, are the Foxy Pirates. These losers are finally making a reappearance after what seems to be, I think, 650 chapters, maybe 700. But yeah, Foxy has had a glow down. He got this really bad mustache, this really bad goatee. He lost his big pirate ship. He lost all of his crew, except for Porsche and Hamburg. And they're also starving. So, yeah, Foxy, man. I'm excited to see how he's going to come back into play. I do think they will, considering how much Oda actually likes these characters. Like, no joke, if you included every single filler and OVA and movie that One Piece has ever had, I do think that Foxy is the most reoccurring villain we have in the series. Until we hit, like, episode 500, and then I think Oda realized that nobody likes Foxy except for him. I don't know. But yeah, like, Foxy had his own movie. He had, I think, 2 or 3 different filler arcs. Like, dude, Foxy was very prominent back in the day. I think that's also why so many people didn't like Long Ring Longland after the fact. You know, like, we were tired of Foxy then, and then Oda just kept on bringing Foxy back in the filler, and we were like, brother, stop. You know, no more Foxy, get him out of here. But now that we're here, 700 chapters later, I wouldn't mind if Foxy and the gang comes back, because I do think Foxy has a really great ability. If you were to take Foxy's slow devil fruit and give it to a competent fighter, oh my god, that would be crazy. But yeah, I'm excited to see Foxy do some stuff again, and I do think he will come back, right? Like, Porsche says that they're hungry, and we know that the world Luffy wants to create is a world where food is abundant, so I do think they're gonna, do something, or at least show up at the final war, or maybe the epilogue. I don't know. How do you guys feel about Foxy? Do you love him? Do you hate him? I know my good friend Daxake is just smiling from ear to ear with this Foxy cameo. So now, we go on a little bit. And let me see here, where are we? Such technology is baffling even to a genius such as myself, and therein lies the problem. Okay, and then we cut off, and we go to the Labostratum. We see Stussy and Kaku, and Kaku looks so done. Yeah, dude, Kaku's just leaning back like he is tired of this. He hates being in this bubble. He's just listening to the message. It's actually pretty funny. So Stussy ends up getting a call from Edison. And Edison's like, hey, Stussy, get the hell out of there. Turn off the security dome and run. Like, at this point, the barrier is just stopping nobody. I mean, even going back before the Gorosei showed up, Bonnie went through the barrier. Luffy went through the barrier twice. Kizaru went through the barrier. It's like, this barrier is not stopping anybody, right? The only person this barrier has genuinely stopped was Kaku. Kaku couldn't bypass it, but that's about it, right? So yeah. Stussy now has a new mission, and that is just to get out of this whole island. But Stussy is having a little bit of a moral conundrum, because now that Vegapunk, the Stella Body, is dead, she doesn't really have a reason to live. And it makes me more curious now than ever to see what is Stussy going to do. Is she going to join the Straw Hats and join the remaining satellites? Or is she going to go a different route? She obviously can't go back to the world government, so outside of the Straw Hats, where could Stussy end up? Personally, I think a great group that Stussy could end up with would be Neo Mads. We know that the Mads team had the original Miss Bakens there, so maybe if they get Stussy, which is a clone that was created by the Mads team, I think it would be pretty solid. Stussy held Vegapunk in such high regards because he is her creator, but she also has other creators too. Caesar helped build her, Judge helped build her, and then we also had Queen, so maybe Stussy hangs out with them. I could actually see that. But of course, it does beg the question of how does she get to Neo Mads when the Straw Hats are right here? But hey, that's a question for a different day. That's just two options, right? Usually when I tackle things like this, I like to leave everything open-ended. Somebody came at me the other day and they're like, oh, Sai, you make all these theories and they're all wrong. And I'm like, that's the point. The point is to make all these theories because, we want to have different routes. Sometimes Oda likes to do curveballs, and we try our best to just, spread the wings a little bit, right? I don't feel like I've ever once tried to lock myself into one and only one headcanon. Minus the VAs being strong. That one really hurt my gut. Yeah, the VA still hurt me to this very day, actually. Yeah. That was one thing I was willing to die on a hill on, but goddamn, they disappointed me. So while Stussy and Edison are having this conversation, we get a glimpse at what Edison is looking like after his trip through the barrier, which I gotta say, another character that made it through the barrier, Edison. Almost forgot about this bozo. But yes, Edison, now that he has changed the shape of the cloud, he is not looking too good. I thought that he would meet us at the giant ship, but it looks like he's kicking the bucket, right? He's huffing, he's puffing, he has bandages on him, we have smoke coming out of him. Yeah, I do think Edison is thoroughly cooked here. One panel that Oda actually slid in that I didn't notice until right now, and this is my, third or fourth time reading the chapter, but Saturn has Conqueror's haki too. I mean, of course, like I said earlier, I'm not surprised that he does, but we got a sneak panel of Saturn staring at a snail, which you could say is his eye powers, but you actually see black lightning in that panel. So yeah, Saturn too, man. Saturn with the Conqueror's haki. Love to see it. It's funny that Warkity had like an entire page where he did the Conqueror's War. Marcus Mars has two panels where he's doing this, and then Saturn has one really small panel where he's just looking at one snail, right? Like, come on, Oda. I know Saturn's a laughingstock, but damn, Saturn got the smallest Conqueror's haki showing, which is hilarious. So we also get an update on Zoro and Jinbei while this is all going down, and they have almost made their way to the 1000 Sunny. They're waiting on Zoro and Jinbei, but they're taking too dang long. What's interesting is that Zoro says, hey, there's nothing to apologize for, Jinbei. We were busy after all. And it's like, damn, dude, like Zoro's still thinking about that fight, right? You know, like Zoro's still thinking about Rob Lucci a little bit here. You know, he saw Rob Lucci as a threat, and as a Rob Lucci fan, I'll take it, right? You know, Rob Lucci fans unite. Zoro thinks we were worth the wait. So we go down a little bit more. We see that the Marines are starting to blockade the giant ship, which makes sense. It doesn't look like they've done any real damage to the ship, and that's probably because the ship is made out of atom wood. This is another headcanon theory, but people believe, I believe it as well, that the atom tree exists on Elbaf. It's the giant tree that we see silhouetted time and time again. And if Elbaf is indeed the home to atom wood, then I feel like all the giant ships would be made of that material. So that would explain why these cannonballs have pretty much no effect on it, which actually makes Venus's feet here even cooler. So we cut over to Venus, and it looks like they've been fighting him for quite some time, because we see Sanji on the ground. I believe it's Oimo. He's also on the ground. Bonnie is in a new kicking position. So it looks like this fight has been going on a little bit off screen. So Venus ends up getting away from Kashi, and then he tries to cut Bonnie. He misses because Bonnie's distorted future runs out, and then he ends up cutting the ship's head off, clean off. And it was a pretty crazy feat. What's cool about this, though, is that when Venus does this cut, in his mind, he says, hey, sense the living voices. And you got to keep in mind, this is not Venus looking for Denden Mushi. No. This is Venus trying to cut somebody. And it's like, yo, this is reminiscent of Koshido and Zoro back when he fought Mr. One, because during that fight he was like, oh, you know, like I have to sense the breathing of all these objects so I can cut it. It kind of reminds me of that. And what's funny about that is that in the very next page we actually see Koshido. Brother, we see Koshido in the very next page. I wonder if that's intentional, right? Like maybe they have two different sword styles, you know, or maybe they're one and the same. I'm not too sure, but, you know, people are putting a lot of stocks into Venus being a descendant of the Shimotsuki, or maybe even someone from Wano. And I feel like this kind of adds more to it. But yeah, I think this is pretty cool. I'm always excited to see how these future opponents shape up to be. So far, Venus, I think, has performed pretty well. I'm glad he got out of Oimo and Kashi's grasp. I'm glad that, you know, he's leaving this battlefront, right? Because we do see him jump up afterwards, and he's now in the sky. And that is when he cuts the cloud. You know, he has diverted his attention over to the Denden Mushi. He doesn't care about Sanji. He doesn't care about Bonnie or the giant ship anymore. He wants to stop Vegapunk, which is something I think all of these Gorosei members should have been focusing on from the get, right? We need all hands on deck, guys. We need everybody to come together and hunt down this damn Denden Mushi. Speaking of the Denden Mushi, though, we still don't know where it's at. You know, like, there's a lot of theories going around now, and I'm starting to believe one theory I've been hearing week after week more and more, and that's the theory that maybe the Denden Mushi is inside of the ancient robot. Because that would make it to where the Gorosei would have to take him down to stop the broadcast. And, dude, nobody's been paying attention to the ancient robot. Like, brother, it is not here. We have a giant monstrosity roaming around this island, and I swear, man, after the panel where he first stood up, nobody's even mentioned him. We get like a silhouette or we get a panel of him here or there, but that's it. Like, we got a reaction shot of the ancient robot in this chapter, but we don't see what he's doing or where he's going. It's pretty crazy. I want to see what the ancient robot's gonna do. Maybe the Denden Mushi is inside of him. Maybe it's inside of York. I've seen that theory floating around too. I thought that was a pretty cool one. But outside of that, man, the Gorosei, they are losing this game of prop hunt badly. So let me see, where are we next? Venus does a pretty cool cut on the cloud. Oh yeah, the Cypherpole agents and the Seraphim, they're now freed. Well, the Seraphim are still in their bubbles, but I feel like it's going to pop and shatter once they hit the ground. So I am going to be working under the assumption that they are going to be free in the very next chapter. As far as what the Seraphim do from here on out, I'm not super sure. Because right now, they don't have any orders given to them. The last person they talked to was Vegapunk, so theoretically, they should be on our side for the time being, until the Gorosei give them orders. And even when the Gorosei do give them orders, I am curious to see what task they're assigned to, right? Like, are we gonna have the Seraphim looking for dented Mushis? Are they gonna fight the Straw Hats? Another variable in this instance is the hierarchy chip as well, because Bonnie, from what I understood, only has control over the Kuma model pacifista. Maybe that extends to the Kuma Seraphim as well. Wouldn't be super surprised. But I personally don't think she can control S-Snake, S-Shark, or S-Hawk. S-Bear, sure, I'll give that one to her. But I don't think she has that high of an authority with these guys. Maybe I'm completely wrong. That's totally fine. But yeah, if that's the case, maybe Bonnie makes S-Bear fight the other Seraphim to buy them some time. And then there's S-Snake. Somebody brought this up in the last video that I made, but they said, yo, like, Sai, if Bonnie has control over S-Bear, what if Luffy has control over S-Snake? Because we saw earlier that since S-Snake is based off Boa, S-Snake is madly in love with Luffy. So much so that she kind of ignores orders to a certain extent. So it would be kind of crazy. Like, imagine S-Snake and S-Bear fighting off against S-Hawk and S-Shark in favor of the Straw Hats. I personally thought that was a really awesome idea, so shoutouts to whoever wrote up that comment. Sorry I don't have your name right here, but yes, that was a really cool idea. As far as the Cyberpol agents go, I don't think they're gonna be bad guys. I've said this before, I'll say it again. I do think they're on our side. Like, the Straw Hats gave them their first meal in 3 or 4 months. I highly doubt they're gonna be, you know, running at full speed to kill the Straw Hats, right? I can see them falling to the ground, and then they're like, oh, well, that's enough for today. You know, like, time to clock out, boys. You know, time to go home, you know? Like, I highly doubt they're gonna look at the Straw Hats and say, yo, we gotta blast these guys. No. It's like Gin from Baratier, right? Sanji gave Gin his first bite of food in months, and then what happened? Gin turned against Don Krieg. I could see the Cyberpol agents being conflicted in pretty much the exact same way. So outside of that, where do we go to next? Koshido, already talked about him. We see a shot of an ancient civilization while Vegapunk is talking about the rise in water. And this is a really cool looking city. It looks futuristic and old school at the same time. I absolutely love it. One good detail we have in the background is this giant fish. I don't believe that's a Sea King. It might just be a giant fish, which is even more interesting because if that is the case, maybe this is correlated to Elbaf. Because we do know that when Kid first showed up to Elbaf, the first thing the Kid Pirate said was, hey, Kid, look at these giant fish jumping out of the water. And what do we have right here? Well, we got a giant fish. Nobody called it a Sea King, so I don't think it is one. But yeah, maybe this is off the coast of Elbaf, and this could be the next location the Straw Hats go to. I think that'd be pretty cool. Or maybe, I have a video coming out about this in the next couple of days, but maybe after Kid lost the Shanks, maybe this is where he is falling down to. I think that'd be pretty dang dope. We get reaction shots from the Revolutionary Army. Dragon hits us with another ... Sabo also hits us with a ... And then now we're cutting over to Kokoyashi Village. We see Nojiko and Genzo. And Nojiko does not care about this message whatsoever, right? You know, Vegapunk is spewing all this dialogue, and then Nojiko is like, hey, Genzo, tell me about this later. I'm gonna go garden a little bit, right? And I don't blame her. I mean, everybody's listening to the message. She could just get the cliff notes later. But I do think it's funny that out of all times to leave, she's like, hey, I'm gonna leave right when the message is getting really good. Like, it's hilarious. It's hilarious. But yeah, after that, Vegapunk drops the good old 200 meters on us, and that is such a crazy revelation, right? Saying that the old world of One Piece used to be like multiple giant continents, and then later became the islands we have today, that's an insane thing to imagine. So I'm gonna add it in right here, but here's my really bad drawing of how I see the world of One Piece now, right? Like, everywhere that we have islands, back 900 years ago, those were most likely just giant mountains or plateaus, right? But because of the rising water, they became islands. So, oh man, I'm just excited to see like what is underneath all of this. And yo, what are the fishmen doing, right? If I were a fisherman, man, I would be traveling around the world after this message, right? I want to see all these ancient civilizations. Like, they can do it. Fishmen can travel all around the world underwater and just find all of this. They've had 900 years to do so. So I wonder why nobody's tried this beforehand. But maybe it's because, well, granted, they did say the reason they stay at Fishman Island is because of the light source. So maybe light is the main problem. If they had a light source or a lantern, they would actually do that. But since they don't, they're just going to be swimming in the dark. I think that could be a good nerf. Or hey, maybe another reason why the fishmen never did that is because they're too busy fighting against the celestial dragons and slavery. Maybe that's the reason why slavery against fishmen came to be in the first place. Maybe the celestial dragons were like, hey, you know, we are trying to hide this lost civilization. We're trying to hide all these ruins, but the fishmen can easily discover it. Well, what do? Let's enslave the fish people. I feel like that is a pretty good nerf on them, and that could be a good reasoning as to why celestial dragons are super racist to them too. Maybe it's not just because, oh, you know, these guys are fish and I don't like fish. Maybe it's because, oh, these guys will discover the lost history if they start exploring. I think that could be pretty solid, and that might even be another reason why there aren't that many Fishman pirates. Literally, all we had were Fisher Tiger and his gang, Arlong, and Jimbei. Like, there's not a lot of fishmen just roaming around as pirates. I think the world government were trying to actively snuff them out before they made too many discoveries. Of course, that is just like wishful thinking. You know, it's like I'm the PR team for the world government at this point. But yeah, I do think that is pretty dang plausible. The next group we get to see are the Drum Island citizens. We see Dalton, we see Dr. Kureha, and Tony Chopper number 2 in the background, which is actually just a giant rabbit wearing a 2 shirt. And that's pretty much it, you know? Like, as far as Dr. Kureha goes, I do think she is going to be a vast wealth of knowledge in the future of One Piece, mainly because she knows about the Will of D. You know, she is the first character in the entire series who mentioned Luffy's middle name as if it were something of greater importance, right? Like, as Luffy was leaving the island, Dr. Kureha was like, ah, yes. So the Will of D lives on. And it's like, brother, you could have told us, you know, like, there's so many, I swear, dude, there's so many characters in the world of One Piece that know so much but tell us so little. And I like that, right? I like the mystery, I like the suspense, but it's like the Rayleigh thing. It's like Yamato and Momonosuke. Dr. Kureha's another one. It's like, guys, let me tell you, if I was a pirate, I'd be holding a gun to their head like, tell me all the details, bum. Yeah, I would be so impatient if I was an actual pirate. The next group we see are the former Baroque work women. We see Miss Golden Week. I don't know if I'd consider her a woman, though. Miss Golden Week. We see, I believe, Miss Groundhog's Day. And it kind of looks like they're just chilling and traveling, man. What's funny about the background that they're in is that it actually looks like a desert. You know, like you see the cactus in the background, you see the mountain in the background, and it kind of reminds me of Alabasta a little bit. But it's like, yeah, I know they're not there. There's no way they went back to Alabasta, right? But yeah, I'm curious to see how they're going to play a role. Will they join Cross Guild? Will they hang out with their former boss again? Not super sure. Honestly, at this point, I think they're better just being retired. We cut down a little bit. We see more reactions from Water 7, which we already talked about last week. And then we go down and we see Big News Morgans. And Big News Morgans is going crazy over this news. I'm not too sure if Big News Morgans is shocked by these revelations, or if Big News Morgans is just upset that Vegapunk is spilling all of these beans and it's not being monetized, right? I think that's more so it than anything. But yeah, Vivi ends up shushing him because she wants to hear the message. And this is when Vegapunk says something pretty important. He says he was wondering how the water levels rose 200 meters. You know, he had no idea. It's not natural. It must have been man-made, but he didn't know how. But something happened last week that solidified that the reason why the rising water levels happened was because of the ancient weapons. And to me, at least, this pretty much confirms that the weapon that was used to destroy Leloucia is now 100% Uranus. You know, I was already there, but there was always that 1% that was like, maybe it's not Uranus, maybe it's something else. But Vegapunk correlating Leloucia's incident to the rising water levels and saying, oh, it's the ancient weapons, makes me believe that it is indeed Uranus. So yeah, that's pretty cool. And that is when we get the final part of the chapter where Vegapunk says that the Great War, which ravaged the world during the Void Century, is still going on. And those powerful weapons, those ancient weapons, still exist waiting to be used again. Think about this, right? Imagine hearing this message and you're Blackbeard. And then guess who walks in through your front door? You got goddamn Caribou walking in here, man. Caribou's walking in here saying, hey, Blackbeard, those ancient weapons, I know about 2 of them, brother. You know, like, dude, Blackbeard going to Wano, stealing Pluton, Blackbeard going to Fishman Island, steering Shirahoshi. It's going to happen at this point, right? You know, like, there's no way Blackbeard passes up on this opportunity to collect these weapons of mass destruction. There's no way. There's no way. Well, maybe there is a way. Like, the way I see it right now is I think each main faction will get their own ancient weapon. So right now, the world government has Uranus. I think Blackbeard could take Pluton. I think Pluton is the most reasonable one for Blackbeard to get. Considering that Wano is pretty close to Hachinosu, it's like I think it's like a week away, maybe? It's something like that. Yeah, I think it's a week away because the Straw Hats took a couple of days to get to Egghead Island, and then it took Garp 1 day to get to Hachinosu. So at the very most, it's a week to get over there. And then you add in Van Augur's Devil Fruit, it's even less, right? Van Augur can just warp you over there, GG. Blackbeard, in my opinion, can very easily Gura no Mi, destroy the rock wall surrounding Wano, and just take Pluton. I feel like that is very easy for him. That is the easiest slam dunk. As far as Poseidon goes, I feel like that's a hard one. I think that could go to Luffy, which, you know, obviously Poseidon's a real person. It's Shirahoshi. But since Luffy has such an affinity with Shirahoshi, I feel like that ancient weapon would go to his side. But I'm not super sure. And we do know that Luffy will revisit Fishman Island because Madame Charlie had the vision where Luffy destroyed Fishman Island. So we know that he comes back at some point in time. So Luffy getting Shirahoshi isn't super crazy. But then again, the Luffy destroying Fishman Island portion is kind of weird still. Like, does Luffy actually do that? Does he do that for the greater good? Or is that Katarina Devon disguised as Luffy? Not super sure. But yeah, dude, there's a lot of things going on here. We end the chapter off with another emu silhouette. Crazy, crazy, man. You know, if Oda wanted to make the chapter of the century, he could have just dropped that emu reveal, man. We still got the eyes, dude. Come on, come on. I'm so curious to see what this guy looks like. I want to see it, man. But hey, with that being said, thank you guys so much for joining me on this little adventure. I really, really freaking appreciate it. Please consider liking, commenting, and subbing down below. It would really help me out a lot. And do I have anything I want to end off on? I don't think so. Yeah, I think I covered all the bases. Let me see. You know, like, sometimes I'll cut this out, but let me see. I'm gonna scroll up to the beginning. Did I miss anything? Oda went to an Ado concert, which is cool, which is the voice actor for Uta from Film Red. Tomorrow Black, crazy theories about the toy. Oh yeah, Jupiter, dude. Where the hell is Jupiter? Yeah, dude, oh my god. He's like my favorite Gorosei design, and he's missing. Why? Jupiter has been missing for 2.5 chapters. Dude, he's like Nico Robin. He just goes missing for weeks and weeks, dude. Where's Jupiter? Like, Saturn had a little panel. You know, Marcus Mars has a panel. Warkity has a panel. Venus had, like, double spreads. Dude, where's Jupiter? Where's my worm guy at? But yeah, hey, with that being said, I'll catch you guys later. Signing out.